For a moment, the six of them just stood there, looking at the new arrival. He'd clearly made his way through the woods as well. His hair was a mess of twigs and burdocks. The cups of his pants were encrusted with hitchhikers. And he'd lost one of his sandals along the way. His left foot looked cut and bloody. But he didn't seem to have noticed. He was raking his fingers through his dark hair, looking at them as if trying to discern what was going on. "Who am I?" "You're the writer," Sheriff Guthrie said, as he put his riot gun away. I remember when Sheriff Masterson introduced us. He said you'd been a resident of town for a long time, and no one could quite remember exactly how long. I don't think I've ever had the pleasure of meeting this one," the warden said, though his tone was dubious. "I've seen him around," said Grandpa. "He's been here for a long time. Grandpa got a weird look on his face, as if he might be a little bit lost. "I feel like he's only been here for a few years, but I also feel like he's been here forever. I pride myself on knowing most of the odd characters in town, but I don't know this one." "I do," said Dr. Winters, as she moved around the pit so that she could put an arm around him. "He's a patient of mine, a truly troubled soul. We speak often, and just recently, he seemed to have begun to forget who he was." "How the hell did he get out into the woods?" Marcus asked. "He's not even armed. Those hellhounds would have made a snack out of him for sure." Dr. Winters fussed over him a little bit, picking the twigs out of his hair and smoothing some of the burdocks from the sleeves of his sweater. "The strange things that occupy Cashmere tend to leave him alone. They ignore him, or maybe they don't see him at all. The people of Cashmere do the same. They see him, they know who he is, and what he does, but they overlook him because he isn't part of their stories." But you see him," Grandpa said, the word story seeming to catch his interest. "Well, of course," Dr. Winters said. "He's a part of my story, after all. He was the first one to welcome me to Cashmere. A long, long time ago." She hadn't remembered it, not for a very long time, but suddenly it came back to her, like one of those aha moments that we all get when a long-buried memory finally comes to the surface. It had been on a night very similar to this one, when they had met for the first time. It had been on a night very much like this one, when she had come to be here and was in a position to be welcomed by the first resident of Cashmere. The two of you would remember. You were part of it, after all. I was forced out of hell, and it was me who made the hole here in the woods. It was my exit from the underworld. It was my entrance into Cashmere. I was disoriented when I surfaced, my hands throbbing and my body aching. I was lying beside this glowing hole into hell when suddenly I heard footsteps coming from the woods. Believe it or not, I was afraid. I was weak and vulnerable after my battle with... Dr. Winters looked off into the woods in a blank and searching way. After my battle with those who would see me put out of my home. And I was afraid that whatever this was that was coming along to finish me off was going to be too much for me to handle. You two remember the stories that Father used to tell us. He said the world outside our own was dangerous. There were men who would burn us and destroy us. There were people who would hunt us. And there were those that could make sure that we never came back once we were slain. All of us were afraid of the material world. But when he came out of the woods, I remembered thinking that the end had come for me. No one spoke. They all hunkered around the glowing hole as they listened to her story unfold. But, to my very great surprise, he offered me his hand and his coat. He welcomed me to the town of Cashmere, and he said I could be its second resident. He told me that it was a little empty at the moment, but maybe I could help him fill it with people. He said he'd been looking for someone to help him, and here I was. He told me... Dr. Winters was suddenly cold, but not in the way that most people were. The chill was not on her skin. The chill was inside her. The memories flowed through her like a winter wind, and she suddenly felt sure that she understood what Juliet said when she talked about having a brain freeze. Dr. Winters was experiencing her own brain freeze, and it made her want to stop telling her story. But she couldn't. She needed to remember, not just for them, but also for herself. The remembering hurt, but it also helped her. Winter may not ever be a human, but it was something that Pamela had always wanted. He asked me what my name was, and when I told him, he said that just wouldn't do. He told me my name was Pamela Winters, and I was a doctor. Not a doctor that cuts people open or that gives them medicine for their colds, but a doctor that helps people's minds. He said I could help the people of this town to forget the things that made them hurt. He said I could take those things and use them to stay alive. He said that's how I would control the demonic nature inside of me. He said I would live on the memories that people wish to be rid of, and that in that way I would be allowed to stay. Winter felt something slide down her cheeks, and when she put her hands to her face, she found that it was wet. Pamela Winters was crying, the tears coming down in big wet drops. It felt good to cry, and she laughed as she wiped the tears that were coming down away. I don't even remember how long that was. It could have been last week. It could have been 1,000,000 years ago, but after that day I started collecting people for the town. I brought in those who were lost, those who were hurt, those who needed a place to stay. Not just me, the town began to draw people in as well. The town draws in what it needs. What it needs is stories. It needs stories the way that I need memories. And I think he's part of that need. She smoothed the man's hair back from his face, smiling at him as he looked up at her with confusion. Who am I? You know who you are. You're the writer. You're the one who weaves the tales for this town, which we call home. We could not exist without you, but you could not exist without us as well. He smiled then, clapped his hands and threw his arms around Dr. Winters. And she hugged him back before looking at that hole with a look of pure hatred. What this town does not need is a portal to hell in its back acre. I think between the 6 of us, we may be able to close it up. I think you would agree, Sheriff Guthrie, that being rid of this infernal portal would be of great use to the town. Isn't that so? Sheriff Guthrie nodded, his hand once again finding the sigil in his pocket. Very well, then. Brothers, will you help me close this portal back to our infernal home? Unless you mean to return there. The warden laughed. Return? Why would I want to go back? To play second fiddle to our father for all eternity? No. I have so much more here than I could ever hope to achieve there. I will stay, and see what is in store for this town, and for my own piece of heaven on the hill. The thing about working for Father, Mr. Seraph said, is that he doesn't like to share. Everything you earn, everything you gain, a piece of it always belongs to him. Let our other siblings fetch and bow for him. I prefer to be my own man and run my own business. No, I believe I will also stay. I fear that the brimstone would not help the complexion of my assistant much, and I fear that your assistant would not survive the loss," he added with a little wink. Dr. Winters turned to the pair of magi who had joined her on her walk. "I don't suppose either of you would have any problem with me sealing this up?" Grandpa shook his head. "Not in the slightest. Seems to me being rid of a portal to hell would probably be the best thing to happen to this town." "It goes double for me," Marcus said. "How can we help?" "Join hands," Dr. Winter instructed. "We'll combine our efforts and close this needless hole so that no more hellspawn find their way to the surface." They came together, all of them joining hands, as the 3 demons and the 2 magi worked their strange sort of incantation. Sheriff Guthrie just stared at the hole and tried to figure out what his part in all of this was. He had no magic, no real power outside the symbol that he wore. But even as the thought occurred, he realized that wasn't true. He did have some power, didn't he? Something he had taken from his predecessor that he might not need anymore if this were closed. Yes, cast it into the hole. Use its power to seal this up and protect your town." It was the first time Sheriff Masterson had said anything to him that wasn't about some failing of his, and as their energy crackled across the opening, he put his hand in his pocket and drew out the strange symbol. He held it out, waiting for the moment when their power would be at its greatest, and then he let it fall into the opening. Their power washed around it, using it as a lightning rod to direct their efforts, and with an earth-shattering crack, the hole suddenly closed itself up, the land looking as if it had never existed at all. They all stood around it, looking at the place where it had once been ripped asunder, and as the night sounds returned to the land, all seemed to be right again. "See, son, I told you when a mysterious force pulls you into the woods in the middle of the night, it's always best to heed the call." Marcus shook his head and tried to hold in his laughter. "What can I say, Gramps? When you're right, you're right." They walked away from the thicket, all of them feeling the absence of the drumming magic that no longer existed there. "I best be off," the warden said. "We may have taken care of the hole that the forces of hell were coming out of, but the ones that still exist in the woods are not going to be terribly happy when they catch my scent. I shall see all of you very soon, I'm sure." He moved off into the woods, and when a large shadow passed over them, only Sheriff Guthrie seemed surprised. "What the hell was that?" "My goodness, it looks like it might have been a thunderbird. Have I ever told you about thunderbirds, Sheriff Guthrie? They used to be all over this land, as abundant as chickens, but in this day and age they have—" Grandpa threw an arm around the sheriff, and he started in on another one of his stories, and his distraction seemed to take them most of the way through the woods. Marcus let Sheriff Guthrie and his grandfather walk a little bit ahead of them, Grandpa weaving his tale as Marcus and Dr. Winters and the well-dressed man took up the rear. He was not familiar with him, but he walked beside Dr. Winters as the two of them kept casting murderous glances at the other. He seemed to be showing an undue amount of interest in the ragged man that walked beside his sister. Marcus tried to think if he'd ever seen the man before, the one they called the Rider, and he thought maybe he had. He assumed he was homeless or maybe a little bit crazy, but in Cashmere, those were two kinds of people that the town certainly had quite a few of. Is he going to be okay? Marcus asked after a time. He'll be okay, Dr. Winters said, as she gave his shoulder a little squeeze. I'll take him home, and by tomorrow he'll be right as rain again. Mostly, I think he just needs a good night's sleep. Sometimes creatives don't get the sort of sleep they really need. A half hour later, they were walking out of the woods, and Marcus could see Grandpa's truck right where they had left it. They offered Sheriff Guthrie a ride back into town, and when he agreed, they offered Dr. Winters and Mr. Seraph a ride as well, but the two declined. Mr. Seraph said that he would walk, and Dr. Winters assured him that the Rider's house wasn't too far from here. Marcus, Grandpa, and a very confused Sheriff Guthrie said their good nights and then pulled out in Grandpa's old truck and headed back into Cashmere. Well, I suppose we should be off then, Dr. Winters said, as she clutched at the young man's shoulders protectively. Yes, I suppose I should be off as well. I left without telling Mr. Jones where I was going, so he's likely to be in a state. Dr. Winters turned to go, but she stopped for a moment and turned to look back at her brother. It wasn't completely terrible to see you tonight. I suppose your presence is something I could grow used to. Her brother smiled. It's always good to bask in your radiance for a little while, my dear sister. She gave him a dubious look. Don't overdo it. I suppose if I saw you at the Botanical Gardens when they have their Halloween opening, I wouldn't turn my back on you. Mr. Seraph watched them go as he stuck his hands deep into his pockets and smiled. I look forward to it, he said, pitching it too low for anyone but him to hear. As the group left the woods, someone was watching them. His friends, the forgotten guardians of Stragview, had been aware that the warden had entered the forest. They had wanted to attack, to rend him to pieces, but their new master had bid them to be patient. He wanted to know what business the warden was about, and now, it appeared, he had his answer. The warden had done something in the woods, and now the glowing hole was gone. The glowing hole, that enlightening crater, which was the means by which more of his army came into the world. It was their way home, their point of egress, and now it was gone. The creatures that served him mourned the loss, but it made no difference to him. His army was as big as it was ever going to be, the creatures that came from it only adding a dozen or so every month. And with the current events going on beyond the wall, Reese knew that he had enough to take the prison. His machinations were beginning to come to fruition.
Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's show. If you think you might like a little more spooky in your life, then please feel free to click on one of the videos we have up here. Maybe look at one of the playlists if you're trying to get caught up. I know, there's so many videos on the channel. There's so many series that are going at the same time. Sometimes you just need a little refresher course, and I gotta say, I always enjoy the views. If you're not subscribed, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Maybe hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We upload a lot on this channel, so you won't want to miss a single story as they come out. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click on the Amazon link down there. There's quite a few books in my Amazon account. You can have a look, and if you'd like a signed copy, get up with me through email, and I'll be happy to work something out with you. Also, there's links to my Patreon, and you can become a member on the channel if you'd like your spooky a little bit early. Patrons and members on the $5 tier get their videos 12 hours early. That's in the morning as opposed to in the evening. Patrons at the $10 level also get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one. Speaking of my patrons, you should see them appearing right now. Just wanted to take a minute to say how much I appreciate all of you. Patrons, subscribers, however you give to the channel. I really appreciate everything you do, and it truly touches me that you have chosen to support the channel in this way. Well, that's enough for now. Till next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.